Get some! Turks, Cenk, Uygur, Adrienne Lawrence with you guys today. And we are going to have a fantastic show. Sorry, that's just the case. I don't know what kind of show you guys signed up for, but you're getting a fantastic one. Adrienne, how you doing?
I am doing as best as can be right now. It is, these are the times.
These are in fact the times. And we highlight and record a note on the times every day on this show. So let's do it.
All right, so as many of you may know, there was another mass shooting this weekend. Yes, that's right, a gunman killed what is now 11 people in a predominantly Asian American community in Monterey Park, California, just outside of Los Angeles. Everyone there was celebrating the Lunar New Year at a dance studio. And we know that at least 10 people were injured, with some still in critical condition. And this also happens to mark the 33rd mass shooting so far this year, and we have not even made it out of January. So there are still a lot of unanswered questions about this shooting, but here is what we know about this horrific event. It was at around 10:22 p.m. local time on Saturday when a gunman opened fire inside of Star Dance Studio, Chinese-owned ballroom dance studio on West Garvey Avenue, less than a block from where a Lunar New Year festival was held. The first day of the two-day festival had just ended. Of the 10 people pronounced dead, which is now 11, as I mentioned, but those 10 were pronounced dead at the scene. 5 were women and 5 were men, the officials said. The wounded victims were rushed to local hospitals in conditions ranging from stable to critical. And the victims were in their 50s and above. Now, another person, as I mentioned, has died earlier in the hospital today, succumbing to their injuries, bringing the total to 11. And the shooter, well, he has been identified as 72-year-old Hu Kan Tran, and he's pictured here. And he had apparently been a regular patron at the studio. Now, after the massacre at the Star Dance Studio, well, Tran traveled across town to Alhambra, and he entered another dance studio, bringing his weapon. And it was there that a 26-year-old civilian wrestled the gun from Tran. And let's hear from this hero.
When he was looking around the room, it seemed like he was looking for targets, people to harm. My first thoughts was, I was gonna die here. This was it. This is when he started prepping the weapon, and something came over me. I realized I needed to get the weapon away from him. I needed to take this weapon, disarm him, or else everybody would have died. So when I got the courage, I lunged at him with both my hands, grabbed the weapon, and we had a struggle. We struggled into the lobby, trying to get this gun away from each other. He was hitting me across the face, bashing the back of my head. I was trying to use my elbows to separate the gun away from him, creating some distance. Finally, at one point, I was able to pull the gun away from him, shove him aside, create some distance, point the gun at him, intimidate him. At this point, I thought he would run away, but he was just standing there contemplating whether to fight or to run away. I really thought I would have to shoot him if he came at me.
This gentleman, Brandon Say, he did his best there and was able to disarm the suspect, but the suspect was able to flee. Tran fled in a white van, and that led to a manhunt across the region. And on Sunday morning, when that van was spotted, according to Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Robert Luna, this is what happened. When officers exited their patrol vehicle to contact the occupant, they heard one gunshot coming from within the van. Officers retreated and requested several tactical teams to respond. Then an armored vehicle, well, it blocked the van, and a SWAT team approached and found Tran dead inside from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, the weapon recovered from the van was a magazine-fed semi-automatic assault pistol that had an extended large capacity magazine. This is one of those things that we know are illegal here in California. And although the officials are still not completely sure about the motive, Monterey Park Mayor Henry Lowe suggested that it may have had something to do with his former wife. My understanding is that he may have come because his ex-wife was reveling, celebrating the Lunar New Year, and it sounded like there was a history of domestic violence, which is unfortunate. Now we know the couple divorced sometime in 2005, but most recently Tran went to police, alleging that his family had tried to poison him, even though the matter was never investigated because Tran never provided any support. Also, a former friend of Tran said that he had a lot of vendettas against people, and also an acquaintance recalled some troubling history about Tran. This from CNN. Tran often complained at the time that the instructors at the dance hall didn't like him and said evil things about him, the friend remembered, adding Tran was hostile to a lot of people there. Cenk, I know this is just another mass shooting, and there was even one going on right as we were starting the show. How does this hit you?
Well, my wife worked in that neighborhood. And so, as I've said many times on the show, eventually a shooting is gonna be in your neck of the woods. And don't be surprised, it's definitely coming. A mass shooting of some sort will be somewhere near you. And it will be because of guns, and everybody will tell you, no, it's mental health or butter knives or doors or windows and other absurdities. They do all that to protect the gun manufacturers who pay their bills. And the gun manufacturers love shootings like this because then everybody worries and they go and buy more guns. So in this case, was it mental health issues? Well, I mean, the guy doesn't sound like he was a very pleasant guy, does he? And he murdered 11 people and shot all those folks. So obviously he had massive issues. But I got news for you. A lot of people have massive issues. And we're not alone. Most of the world has the same exact mental health problems that we do. Do they have mass shootings like this all the time? No, they don't. There's one reason, because we give guns to everybody. Who cares? In fact, there's more guns in the country than human beings. That is insane. And like, we live in it. So it's like when they ask a fish, how's the water? He says, what water? When they ask us about, why do you guys have all of these guns? Are you guys lunatics? No one else in the world does this. And whoever has more guns has more deaths from guns. Everybody knows that. It's a fact. We'll show you some stats in a minute. But it's also super obvious, right? And it's harder to kill people with a rope or a towel or whatever conservatives imagine that people get killed with. So everyone knows why this happens. It happens uniquely in America, and it's because we allow everyone to have weapons, any kind of weapons. It really is, it's literally insane. As a country, we've lost our minds. So again, when it happens in your neighborhood, don't get surprised, don't think you're special. No, everyone is getting killed out here. While the right-wingers have fake concerns like Muslims taking over Tulsa, Oklahoma, or transgender people taking over bathrooms or high school sports teams, all these imagined things that you're supposed to be afraid of. Oh my God, a drag queen show, be afraid. Meanwhile, we're literally getting massacred every single day, and they're not at all concerned about it. By the way, us and our kids. So this is the 5th mass shooting this month. That would be more than a lot of countries have in a decade. We've had it in 1 month. If you think it's an aberration, it's not an aberration. Last year, was the 2nd highest number of mass shootings in American history. And this is by the most stringent definition. Not just 4 people shot, but 4 people killed, and not including the shooter. So this is the most conservative definition of a mass shooting, and 42 of them happened last year, right? So what is that? That's more than 3 a month. So almost at about 1 a week of a massacre, literal massacre. And we've gotten used to it in America. We're like, oh yeah, another massacre. Oh, it happened to you and your family this time. Okay, yeah, it's normal. Don't pretend it isn't normal now. It's definitely normal. Don't pretend that there's a bigger danger in America than lunatics having guns, because there isn't. It's empirical, it's obvious, it's overwhelming. But we have to worry about the feelings of right-wingers. Oh, they have such sensitive feelings. If you don't let people murder each other nonstop, their feelings will be hurt. Oh my God, my Second Amendment rights. You have, unless you're in a well-regulated militia, you have no Second Amendment rights. The Second Amendment is very, very, very clearly for a well-regulated militia. Can you not read? And of course you can read, and of course you know you're lying. Oh, you've read that amendment. You know it doesn't say that anybody can have a gun, let alone a semi-automatic weapon, etc. right? Assault rifles, it never says anything about that. They never contemplated that. But you think, well, I know, but I like the pretty little lies that we tell ourselves because I like guns. It makes me feel safe. I like to go shooting. Sometimes people, sometimes animals. Lately, the Republicans have been saying vermins. They're very worried about vermins. That's why we need these guns. Oh, by the way, you and your family will be murdered, but we're worried about having the right to shoot a vermin. Okay, oh, by the way, to be fair to the Republicans, they also say we want to protect against government tyranny, so we also need the weapons to murder cops and military if they come for us. So this is the country we live in. So in this case, it could have been me and my family. We were celebrating the Chinese New Year last night. We didn't happen to be in Monterey Park, but we easily could have been. And next time it could be you. And that's because Republicans make money, cold hard cash from gun manufacturers, and they literally don't mind you dying so they can get paid. That's just the facts.
Yeah, and that's exactly what, unfortunately, as a society, it seems we are so incredibly willing to tolerate. Despite the fact that we can't even go celebrate Lunar New Year, we can't go to school, we can't go to classes. I felt so much safer when we were in the midst of a pandemic and people were dying from a virus that could not be seen than I feel when I go out on the street nowadays, just by virtue of the fact that guns are everywhere. And they're not well regulated in any form or fashion. And as you've noted, Cenk, it's been bastardized, that Second Amendment. And it has to the benefit of legislature who get to fill their coffers from gun manufacturers. And the thing is this is completely and totally, without a doubt, a uniquely American issue. And the right wingers want us to think that it has nothing to do with guns. They love that mantra of guns don't kill people kill people. Well, guess what? Guns, people use guns and kill people at a very high rate. And that's something that is, again, very unique to the United States because of our access with guns. We have the higher per capita rate of gun ownership in the world. In fact, the highest. The United States is the only nation in the world where civilian guns outnumber people. There are around 120 civilian-owned guns per 100 American residents. And the next closest country is Yemen, with a gun ownership rate of 53 guns per 100 people. And the thing is, it's unsurprising that the US has the highest firearm homicide rate in the so-called developed world. As we know, in 2019, the number of US deaths from gun violence, it was about 4 per 100,000 people. That's 18 times the average rate of other developed countries. And the rate of deaths from gun violence in the US, well, it's 8 times greater than in Canada, 22 times greater than in the European Union, and 23 times greater than Australia. Nearly 53 people are killed each day by a firearm in the US. And also we happen to have home to 4% of the world's population, but we account for 44% of global suicides by firearm. That was at least in 2019. Who knows if that number will unfortunately increase. And the thing is, it's not like there's anything we can't do about it. We know that other countries have actually been successful in implementing solutions. This from CNN. Less than 2 weeks after Australia's worst mass shooting, that was in 1996, the federal government implemented a new program banning rapid fire rifles and shotguns and unifying gun owner licensing and registrations across the country. In the next 10 years, gun deaths in Australia fell by more than 50%. They are seeing measurable change because they're taking meaningful action. That is something the US doesn't want to do. Cenk.
We have 18 times the number of gun deaths because we have so many more guns. This is not remotely complicated. Anyone who tells you that it is, they're lying to you because they like their guns or they make money off of guns. And so I like fantasy football, but my hobby doesn't murder people. So You should look into yourself and see, are you comfortable with it? Well, you know what? I got a couple of rodents around the bend there, and so I like taking pot shots at them. Well, because of that so-called right, lots of people, thousands of people are going to be murdered in America. We know that if we take reasonable regulation as other countries do, we would have 1/20th the number of deaths. But Republicans say, no, I want 20 times the number of deaths because I like my guns so much. These are stone cold facts. So whether you catch feelings over these facts is up to you. And look, I'm going to say the last couple of things here. Republicans say, oh, mental health issues, and then what do? They vote down any bill that would address mental health because they're goddamned liars. And if the mainstream media had any integrity, they would call the truth and a lie. Every time you hear Republicans talking about mental health issues, they have almost all voted against funding mental health issues. So total and utter liars. They don't care about this issue at all. The Democrats and the Republicans are oftentimes very similar, especially on economic issues. We're about the only show in the country that tells you that all the time. We criticize Democrats all the time, but not on this one. This one, because the facts show you the Democrats are pretty good on this. The Republicans are the worst people on earth. Okay, and how about this idea of, well, was the gun legal or illegal? Who cares? You can just drive 5 minutes anywhere in America and get you can get almost any gun you want perfectly legally. You just go to a red state. They'll sell you a bazooka. Soon they'll sell you nukes. Because, we gotta make money from guns and men feel inadequate, we need guns. Okay, well then this is the massacres you have because of that decision you made. You made that decision and this is the consequences. We bring you facts. How you feel about those facts is up to you. But we have, as a country, decided, by the way, for the rest of us, that we're not gonna do anything about it. Because the feelings of Republicans are more important than our fellow citizens' lives. So do the Democrats fight back as hard as they need to? No. Do they call them monsters dripping in blood? No. Okay, no, that would offend their goddamn colleagues' feelings. 11 people are dead there now. But we wouldn't want to offend the feelings and sensitivities of goddamn Republican senators. Okay, so last thing is the hero. If you notice, not only was he brave enough to go fight that guy and make sure he didn't kill anyone else, but once he had a clean shot at him, he didn't take it. There's not a single cop in the country who would have been that heroic. First of all, without a weapon, to go attack a guy with a weapon. We had over 400 cops sitting outside of Uvalde, armed to the teeth, and they wouldn't go in because there was one guy with a weapon in there. You think they would have gone in unarmed like this hero? No way. Now, is it that every cop in the country is a coward? No, of course not. But do we train them to be cowards? Yes. We train them to be 10,000 times more cowardly than that hero you saw. And then if they got a hold of the gun and the guy they were in a life and death struggle, do you think a cop would have resisted shooting that guy? No, boom, he would have been dead in a second. Now he wound up killing himself and I got no sympathy for that lunatic. But look at that guy who chose restraint and who didn't want to kill another human being, even after he could have been killed by him just a second ago. I love that guy. That's the best of us. I wish people in power had 1% of the integrity that he has.
That would be remarkable. But instead, Republicans collect coins and we collect coffins. We will be back after this.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Adrienne with you guys. Of course, make sure you're checking out Overruled. That's Adrienne's show on Rebel Headquarters. She's got great commentary, including in one of the stories we got later in the rundown. I watched her video to get educated on it. So, Adrienne, tell us what's next.
All right, so there are some changes in the White House. Joe Biden is expected to tap Jeff Zients to replace the outgoing White House Chief of Staff, Ron Klain. Now, the move has been slammed by progressives for a reason. Well, Zients has a history of profiteering from healthcare, it appears. Yes, that's right. So Revolving Door Project Executive Director Jeff Hauser explained this. Americans are appalled by profiteering in healthcare. Jeff Zients has become astonishingly rich by profiteering in healthcare. Americans are aghast at how social media companies have built monopolies and violated privacy laws. Zients served on the board of directors of Facebook as it was defending itself against growing attacks from both political parties. Now, an article in the American Prospect last year also detailed Zients' exploits in the healthcare industry. It said this: Zients, who was replaced as COVID-19 response coordinator back in April, has controlled, invested in, and helped oversee healthcare companies that were forced to pay tens of millions of dollars to settle allegations of Medicare and Medicaid fraud. They have also been accused of surprise billing practices and even medical malpractice. Taken together, an examination of the companies that made Zients rich paints a picture of a man who seized on medical providers as a way to capitalize on the suffering of sick Americans. In the end, it seems to have all paid off. The most egregious violation is documented in a 2015 Justice Department settlement announcement. Portfolio Logic, the investment firm Zients founded with his own money, agreed to pay almost $7 million to resolve allegations of fraudulent Medicare and Medicaid billing involving a subsidiary that it purchased in 2007. It really seems like either Biden is not taking issue with someone who makes a profit off of the American people when they are suffering in terms of medical needs, or maybe kind of just doesn't care. I really don't know. Cenk?
Yeah, so context is important here. The funny thing, tragic thing is that he was considered among the moderates that Biden could have picked. So there were two other chief staff possibilities that were far more pro-corporate than this incredibly wealthy finance guy. Okay, so that's the world we live in. So which, again, massively pro-corporate caretaker would you like to run the government? So this guy is, 7 out of 10 on that scale, as opposed to the other guys who were 9.5 out of 10. On that scale. By the way, to add extra trouble to this, they're basically saying, and it's amazing how brazen it is, and no one that's reporting it is acting outraged at all, that Biden is basically gonna shift his attention to getting reelected going forward, and this new guy is gonna run the country. Oh, okay, great to hear. Well, I guess I'm happy he didn't pick the 9.5 out of 10 conservatives, right? But here, more context. Ron Klain is the chief staff for the first 2 years. He's stepping down now. Ron Klain was pretty good. He's, I don't know, a 6 out of 10 on the corporate scale, right? You're not gonna get a progressive, of course not, right? But Ron Klain was considered pretty good to really good to progressives because he would listen to them. It's like the Washington standard is. Remember, at least half the Democratic Party is progressive. They're like, we have listened to people who represent half our voters some of the time. Whoa, that's why Klain was a legend. Okay, this new guy, not as much. So look, on the Medicare and Medicaid fraud, I have two thoughts about it. Look, they bought a subsidiary. Did they do it before they bought it or after they bought it? How much was this guy involved in the day-to-day operations? Because I want to be fair. If he was like Rick Scott and he basically ran the company, then it's 1,000% on him. If it was something that they did, that company did before they bought him, well, I don't know that you should have bought him, but hey, that's a little bit of a different equation. So those details are not clear. But by the way, the second point here is, this is why Democrats are so soft on Republicans. So Rick Scott his company committed the largest Medicare fraud in American history. It was just forget Medicare fraud, it was one of the biggest robberies in American history. And Democrats almost never criticize him on it. Why? Because sometimes their chief of staff to the president of the United States of America has done similar things. So they neutered themselves because they're also pro-corporate. And this is the uniparty that we have, and they go back and forth. But at the end of the day, Adrienne, the most salient fact is that they're not gonna do anything for the next 2 years anyway, right? It's not like Biden can pass something through a Republican House. That's got an approximately 0% chance of happening. It's not like Biden was that Democratic to begin with. He largely agrees with this chief of staff. He agrees with the other guys he would have hired too, the ones that were 9.5 out of 10 conservative, right? And he didn't really want to do half his agenda anyway. He made sure that $15 minimum wage was killed right out of the gate. He did that, not the Republicans. So Biden's going to be super happy doing absolutely nothing for the next 2 years. Anyone telling you otherwise was weirdly lying to you, probably to appease the powerful.
Absolutely. And for some reason in our country, we really revere people who are wealthy, and we revere them so much that we really don't necessarily care how they got their wealth, even if it meant they got over on the American people and took advantage and exploited us. And maybe it's because the country is founded upon exploitation of a people's. I really don't know, but I know that it's disgusting and it's detrimental. But it doesn't seem that Biden really has that problem with Zients, even though his performance when he was in government also seems to be criticized. We know this, that the Zients-led COVID response, it refused to challenge Big Pharma's monopoly control in the US and globally over technologies that relied crucially on public support. And as a result, the United States and other rich countries failed to expand vaccine supply sufficiently to meet global need. But of course, on the flip side, that during his term as COVID-19 response coordinator, Zients was far and away the wealthiest member of Biden's cabinet, disclosing assets worth at least $89.3 million and as much as $442.8 million. Wow, that's a nice little gap there. Leaves a lot of wealth potential, I'm sure. It just, again, it's astonishing how much we revere individuals who have considerable amounts of money, even if they got it doing the most dastardly and, as far as I'm concerned, embarrassing things. Cenk?
Yeah, Adrienne, it's, to me, I don't really care about the money, right? So the establishment thinks that if you have money, that means by definition, you're a very successful person. Oh, go revere them all, the great men with all of their money, right? Oh, come on. We've seen them make 1,000 mistakes, let alone 1,000 things that they did with bad intent, right? On the other hand, having money doesn't make someone evil. Oprah's got money, LeBron's got money. A lot of different people have money, right? It's the question is, what do you do with that money and how did you earn that money? Look, in his particular case, again, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Different people, and some whom you can trust, etc. And take this one with whatever grain of salt you want, and I'm sure the Republicans will go nuts over it. But for example, Dr. Fauci says he's enormously competent, and it's really important to have a competent chief of staff. Well, that's true, okay? So that's your upside for him. On the other hand, he's among the people who made sure, as Adrienne pointed out, that the healthcare companies did not give the vaccine out globally at reduced prices. Because God forbid, they would have cut into profits at all. It's possible that millions of people died because of that, not in America, but outside of America. But here in America, hardly a peep, hardly a peep. Biden pretended that he was in favor of the forcing the companies to give their vaccine across the world, but it was a total joke. He did not enforce that at all. He did absolutely nothing to push that forward, and the companies were like, no, we choose profits over human beings' lives. And Zients was perfectly comfortable with that. Why? Because he made a fortune from healthcare companies. So this is not that complicated. Okay, so yes, that's a problem. Finally, look, Ron Klain was smarter too. Why? Because he met with progressives. Did progressives get anything? No. No, I think look, in a lot of ways, if I'm being honest with you guys, and I am, progressives are kind of humiliated in the first 2 years. Oh, we're gonna give you $15 minimum wage, voting rights, paid family leave, Green New Deal. Oh yeah, we're gonna be FDR 2.0. And then when it actually came to pass, they're like, no, we're not gonna give you a goddamn thing. Here's a couple of crumbs off a Green New Deal. Go enjoy it, but we're not giving you anything else, okay? And then progressives have to be like, oh, thank you, sir, thank you, sir. See, that's smart politics by Ron Klain. It's not good for the country, but at least it's smart. These guys instead are going to be antagonistic for, oh, we're not going to listen. But what difference does it make? Are progressives going to fight back against Biden? Unfortunately, approximately 0% chance of that as well.
It's absolutely, it's just heinous, but hey, it's our government, which is great. And there's another government down there in Florida with someone else who is equally heinous.
state of Florida, our education standards not only don't prevent, but they require teaching Black history, all the important things. That's part of our core curriculum. This was a separate course on top of that for advanced placement credit. And the issue is we have guidelines and standards in Florida. We want education, not indoctrination. If you fall on the side of indoctrination, we're going to decline. If it's education, then we will do.
Yeah, that was Governor Ron DeSantis down there in Florida, and him and his fellow snowflake conservatives are terrified that kids might learn the truth about the United States and its history, such that they have decided to ban an advanced placement course on African American studies. Yes, that's right. Now also DeSantis is trying to defend his decision with a lot of nonsense. But before we get to more of that nonsense, here are some of the details of what's going on. So the Florida Department of Education is asserting that the course violates state law and is historically inaccurate. Yes, that AP course on African American studies. Now, Florida education officials, they did not specify exactly what content the state found objectionable, but they said this per NBC News. As presented, the content of this course is inexplicably contrary to Florida law and significantly lacks educational value. In the future, should College Board be willing to come back to the table with lawful, historically accurate content, the Education Department will always be willing to reopen the discussion. Now, presumably they're referring to the so-called Stop Woke Act there in Florida that DeSantis signed into law last year to regulate lessons on race and gender in the classroom, with the goal really of protecting students from feeling guilty or distressed in any way by learning about the history of the US. So what is this really about that's so horribly and offensive from the AP course? Well, from the College Board's description of the course, there is literally nothing. This per AP News. The College Board website describes the course as interdisciplinary, touching on literature, arts, humanities, political science, geography, and science. The pilot program is debuting at 60 schools across the country before it expands to additional schools. The organization has been working on constructing the course for more than a decade, according to its website. And they say the goal of the class is to explore the vital contributions and experiences of African Americans. And it's also a way for high school students to earn college credit. Now, Henry Louis Gates Jr., a renowned expert on African American history, who also helped develop this AP African American Studies curriculum, well, he said this back in September. AP African American Studies is not CRT. It's not the 1619 project. It is a mainstream, rigorously vetted academic approach to a vibrant field of study, one half a century old in the American Academy and much older, of course, in historically Black colleges and university. But of course, that wasn't acceptable to DeSantis, who elaborated on the unacceptable nature of what he called queer theory that he says is in this AP African American Studies program.
This course, so when I heard it didn't meet the standards, I figured, yeah, they may be doing this here. It's way more than that. This course on Black history, what's one of the lessons about? Queer theory. Now, who would say that an important part of Black history is queer theory? That is somebody pushing an agenda on our kids. And so when you look to see they have stuff about intersectionality, abolishing prisons, that's a political agenda. And so that's the wrong side of the line for Florida standards. We believe in teaching kids facts and how to think, but we don't believe they should have an agenda imposed on them. When you try to use Black history to shoehorn in queer theory, you are clearly trying to use that for political purposes.
Yeah, that's cute. As we know, DeSantis will come up with whatever he needs to come up with in order to justify his truly somewhat veiled agenda to essentially elevate the desires and needs of the cishet white population. But of course, in response to Florida's decision, the College Board put out what is pretty much a very weak statement. They said, like all new AP courses, AP African American Studies is undergoing a rigorous multi-year pilot phase, collecting feedback from teachers, students, scholars, and policymakers. The process of piloting and revising course frameworks is a standard part of any new AP course, and frameworks often change significantly as a result. Now they're going to release an updated curriculum when the pilot program is complete, but for now, students in Florida, won't be able to access any of that information from the AP African American History course. It's very interesting to me because I will say that College Board should have stepped up and pulled its AP courses from Florida in toto. But that would actually require having a backbone. Cenk.
Yeah. Well, Adrienne, you're actually talking about one of the most important parts of the story because now DeSantis gets to bully the whole country. Any red state can say, hey, you know what? I don't like teaching about black people. And that's what this is about, 100%. I'll get to the details of that in a second. But you know what? Well, why don't you change it up, okay? And while you're teaching about black people, I don't want you to teach about gay black people, okay? I want you to erase them from history. But wait, some of the biggest people involved in the civil rights movement happen to be gay, right? Can we teach about it? No, it sounds like queer theory. I don't even know what queer theory is. Look, Adrienne, I'm gonna ask you, you're smarter than me. I don't know if it's a real theory and it's obscure graduate level thing that they're pulling now and creating this critical race theory kind of aura around it, or did he just make it up? I've never heard of it before.
It's one of those things like with critical race theory that you know that DeSantis can't define any of these things. He wants to slap theory on the back end of something to generate some kind of fear among people who really have no idea what they're talking about. And I would say Santos is the same in terms of his approach. The fact is that this AP African American Studies, as you've noted, Cenk, it probably did address the intersectional aspects of individuals' lives in terms of the remarkable changes and advancement and progression in our society that black people made, who happen to also have that intersectional dynamic and aspect of a certain sexual identity or a gender identity that also may have complicated their fight and their struggle, or even made it even more incredible. And those are beautiful things that should be brought up and should be discussed. And yet we see DeSantis trying to pinpoint that and to sexualize it because he knows that in our puritanical society, that hypersexualization of people will get these individuals scared and allow people to say, yes, exactly. We don't want these groomers or all of this nonsense that they want to leverage and wage. And that is truly what DeSantis is getting at and trying to bully people out of knowledge and education to understand the evolution and development of our society and the contributions made by people who are not cishet white males.
Yeah, and so when the College Board gets intimidated like this, then they might change the course for the whole country and wipe out all queer people or LGBTQ folks from African American history. I mean, let alone the fact that this isn't really about queer people, but get a load of DeSantis' excuse there. We would have taught people about black folks, but they were also teaching a little bit about gay folks, and we hate gay folks so much. We won't let you teach about black folks, even though we're okay with black folks, kind of. No, they were never gonna allow an African American AP class in Florida. It didn't matter at all what was in the book. They were gonna ban it, okay? It's not just about the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. In Florida, they also have the legislation talking about critical race theory and all of these things and how you shouldn't teach too much racism. Things that would make someone feel guilty. What is that? What kind of insane standard is that? How do I affect your feelings? You don't have to feel guilty about it. First of all, you're a kid, you didn't do anything wrong. But nobody says in any of those texts, oh, the white kids did something wrong. That's absurd, it's totally made up, right? Or they're like, yeah, but a white kid could get offended if you tell them that racism existed at one point. This is hatred, pure and simple. If you're on that side, okay, but understand, you're on the side of hatred. You want to hate gay people, you want to hate black people. What is this? Like, first of all, when they asked the Florida, hey, why are you guys banning this course? In the beginning, they had no answer. DeSantis came up with this many days later, after it became a national story. They're like, oh, we got to invent something. I mean, and by the way, don't get me wrong. DeSantis wants us to do this story because he wants everybody in the country to know he's the guy who banned teaching African American studies in Florida. He wants us to complain about it so you can go, I see that, I own the libs. I hate black people more than anybody else does. That's the whole point of this story. Congratulations, Ron DeSantis, mission accomplished. You win, You hate black people more than other Republicans do. Congratulations, you must be so proud. But when pressed and pressed and pressed, why can't they study African American studies like the rest of the country? Yeah, intersectionality. Okay, what do you mean? So intersectionality is not just about LGBT folks, it's about all the different identities that people have. So for example, some people in the movement, some African American heroes were women. So for example, Harriet Tubman could have had issues within the black community or the white community about the fact that she was a woman, let alone that she was black. And that could be a really interesting conversation. By the way, could be critical of other blacks. It depends on what the situation is, I don't know, right? But the Republicans say, no, I don't want you to say intersectionality. Don't mention that she's a girl, okay? You guys are lunatics, total lunatics, okay? Now, when it comes to LGBT folks, Bayard Rustin, one of the greatest organizers this country has ever had, happened to be black and happened to be gay. And by the way, dealt with a lot of issues from being gay within the black community. But we're not allowed to study that because it might hurt Ron DeSantis' feelings. It might hurt Republicans' feelings to talk about black people or gay people. We have to pretend they don't exist. Look, if you're a Republican and you like that, have at it, Hoss, man. You wonder why we can't get along. How am I supposed to have a friendship with or in a relationship or get along with people who go, I don't want anybody finding out about black people in this country. And by the way, in African American studies, they also study all the great things that African Americans have done, right? Americans who come from that community. No, I don't want to find out about it. I don't want my kids finding out. I don't want my kids finding out that they're gay people, okay? They're dangerous and sexual. Oh, I know, because straight white guys, not at all sexual or dangerous. Okay, look, we're all humans, you knuckleheads. But we can't convince Republicans that we're all humans. We just can't. They hate the idea of equality. So that's what this story is about.
Absolutely, and the whole thing with queer theory, which is a legitimate thing, and you should probably look it up out there because it's going to be something I'm sure that DeSantis is going to bring up again and again and again, because it talks about gender and sexual identities outside of the heteronormativity that is pushed in our society. And so you can probably expect DeSantis to be using that line in the coming future. And so we will be back and we have more for you as it concerns more attacks on individuals who do not play that heteronormative gender identity game that DeSantis likes.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Adrienne with you guys. You guys are checking out Adrienne on Rebel Headquarters. I know it because I see the numbers, but keep on doing it. And I want to thank a couple of folks in our audience. Moondragon gifted 5 Young Turks memberships on YouTube. A bit of an American hero for doing that. We appreciate it. For those of you who want to sign up, you can hit the join button below the video on YouTube or go to tyt.com/join. And T42, who's a YouTube member, just had a funny comment I wanted to read. I'm queer and I have a theory. I appreciate that, I do. All right, Adrienne, what's next?
All right, so let's head over to some red states that are really continuing their campaign against trans people from having rights. That's right, they're introducing one hateful bill after another. And the latest one comes from West Virginia and also North Dakota. Well, first up on West Virginia, well, there are 2 bills that have been introduced, and this is in Manchin's state, aiming to protect minors from being exposed to trans people. Here are the details. So the bills introduced this week by State Senator Michael Ansinger, a Republican, would prohibit obscene and sexually explicit materials in or within 2,500 feet of the state's schools and would bar children from being present from obscene performances or displays. And the bill's 4-point definition of obscene matter is, for the most part, general and includes material that appeals to the prurient interest or that is patently offensive. But the 4th part of the definition specifically defines indecent displays of a sexually explicit nature in part as any transvestite and or transgender exposure, performances, or display to any minor. Now, violators could face fines and misdemeanors. School personnel who violate the school-related bill, that's SB 252, could be charged with a misdemeanor, which can carry a fine of up to $500 and or a year in prison. And people who violate the bill regulating venues and performances, SB 278, could face a misdemeanor, a fine up to $1,000 or jail time. Now, Andrew Snyder, the executive director of Fairness West Virginia, that is an LGBT rights group, said this about the bills. These bills are like the Don't Say Gay, but on steroids. They seem like they're about protecting kids from harm, but really it's a ploy to erase LGBTQ people from public life. Absolutely. And we also know that per the Washington Post, so far this year, lawmakers have introduced more than 120 bills targeting LGBTQ people, according to an NBC News analysis. In West Virginia, legislatures have introduced at least 10. That is astonishing given the fact that we are just now in 2023. But it really shows you what the focus is for a lot of members of legislature around the country, that they are looking to roll back the civil rights and just the any sense of humanity that individuals from the trans community have. Cenk.
3 parts of this that will tell you what it's actually about. So they say, well, it's about protecting the children. And from pure interest, like things that are sexual. Hey, this isn't anti-LGBTQ. Really? Then why were transvestites and transgender people, according to their language in the bill, the only ones mentioned? You didn't mention, hey, by the way, if a straight woman shows her breasts to young kids, or a straight man shows his genitalia, no, none of that is mentioned. The only people mentioned are transgender people. Gee, I wonder why they're passing this bill. Your hatred is showing. It's not. If you think you're doing a sophisticated job of hiding it, you're not. Okay, that's point 1. Point 2 is how broad the bill is in 2 different directions. One is how it applies to transgender folks. They say that they're not allowed to do any, if there's kids around, any singing, dancing, skits, or monologues in order to entertain an audience. Monologue is talking. So if a transgender person is talking in the vicinity of kids in West Virginia and someone is entertained by that conversation, they could be put in prison for up to a year. You're gonna pass that bill? You're gonna pass that bill? Probably Republicans think, sure. You know why? Because they're not trying to be non-discriminatory. The whole point is discrimination. So if you told the Republicans you might put transgender people in jail for being transgender, they think, oops, we did it again. By the way, mainstream media, again, all they do is political correctness to help Republicans. I know you've heard your whole life, liberal media. Just because you heard that from Republicans for 40 years doesn't make it correct or honest or true. In reality, the media should be telling you every time 120 bills in just this short period of time. Since 2018, it's been over 700 bills that Republicans have tried to pass against the LGBTQ community. You know what that means? That means they hate them. They're targeting them. They're discriminating against them. They're saying they should not have the same rights as every other American. That's because, generally speaking, Republicans are so much more un-American than the rest of us. They hate the idea of equality. They hate the idea of justice. They love discrimination. That's why they propose bills like this. Hey, listen, if you're a Republican, West Virginia or elsewhere, you can say, oh, Cenk, I'm so offended, man. That's ridiculous, okay? I love this country, but these transgender people had it coming. They should be treated differently. Thank you for making my point. You're not getting it. You're the hateful person.
Yep, and it's only hate because it's damn sure not constitutional. I can tell you that the law is extraordinarily vague, and it's definitely going to run afoul of First Amendment rights. Because as you noted, if you're just somewhere entertaining people, it's like, yeah, you got a First Amendment right, so someone can't come over and slap handcuffs on you. And also, as we've seen with other obscenity laws out there, they can chill people's First Amendment rights, making them afraid to do what they want to do, which is just be members of society. And apparently North Dakota is on that same trip, because there, what the GOP is doing is introducing a bill where they want to fine people for using their preferred pronouns. Yeah, that's right. So Republican State Senator David Clemens, and there should be a picture of him right there. Yeah, great chap. Well, he introduced the bill. And what we know from Vice News is this: the rule would apply to organizations that receive state funding, which includes public schools. That means schools and teachers could be fined $1,500 for using their trans colleagues or students' pronouns. According to the bill, when a person's gender identity is contested, the person's tetranucleic acid, I don't know what they're making up anyway, or their, excuse me, yeah, I got that. Now that I see it, DNA. Yeah, leave me alone. Now, that would be used to establish the sex and gender. This more precise. Words used to reference an individual's sex, gender, gender identity, gender expression. They mean the individual's determined sex at birth, male or female. State Senate Bill 2199. Any person that violates this section must be assessed a fee of $1,500. Yeah, it's $1,500. Also, it's just quite interesting because I'd love to know if they actually plan to have scientists involved in passing this bill, because scientists will tell you there is a lot more than just male or female. In fact, there are intersex. And as I like to know, there are as many intersex people in this world as there are redheads. So you have to realize there are many people around us who are intersex, and I know a number of intersex people, but let's be smart and realize it's not just male or female. But anyway, this bill has faced a considerable amount of pushback, as it should, because it is ignorant and very, very foolish. But even so, the state Senate Judiciary Committee, well, they recommended the bill shouldn't pass. And that should tell you as well that the courts there may not be that inclined to go ahead and allow for it to be enforced. But hey, why not go ahead and put it out there to let individuals know that they cannot be who they are and be worthy of respect in our society? Cenk.
Okay, so let's break this one down real quick. So if it passed, if you called Caitlyn Jenner, not Bruce, you'd have to pay them $1,500. Every time you called someone by their correct name, you have to pay $1,500. They're like, no, this is a hilarious new low for Republicans. They're like, you must call people by the incorrect name. The guy's worried about fake news. Okay, so I'm gonna break it down further though. So they say, and to be fair to the Republicans, they say, look, this one's not likely to pass in North Dakota. And asked why, the other Republicans say it's poorly written. And you might get excited, go, oh, well, maybe they use that as an excuse, and maybe North Dakota is a little bit more progressive than we realize, more open. No, they have 10 other bills against transgender people, and some of which have already passed, so including not allowed to have gender affirming care for certain ages. You're not allowed to play in certain sports teams at certain ages, et cetera. All these different restrictions that only apply to people who are transgender. And these are the people who claim that they like equality. Absurd. No, but in this one, they're like, look, we love hating transgender people in North Dakota if you're a Republican, but we don't like poor grammar. This one was poorly written. Oh, wow, okay. And which brings me back to the first one. They said, well, the distinction we're drawing in West Virginia is if something is patently offensive and involves transgender people, okay? Patently offensive, okay, well, by whose definition? If you ask Republicans, Roy Moore, who molested underage girls and was so well known for it that the local malls would issue advisories, watch out, a pervert's on his way. He targets young women, young children, and Republicans thought that's not offensive. And they nominated him to be senator in Alabama. But they think, oh, you're in the LGBTQ community, I find you patently offensive. We're gonna let these guys decide what's offensive and trust their standards? Guys, if you're not getting it, let me be clear, that 120 bills, that's just so far this year. It hasn't even been a month. And over 100, they're like, all right, we're in charge. Are we gonna raise people's wages? Are we gonna give them health care? Are we gonna give them paid family leave? No, let's attack transgender people. 120 in like 20 days. The whole point of the Republican Party is to drive hatred and fear and get people all riled up so they can pass tax cuts for the rich. That's the only point. And if you're in the Republican Party and you're rich, you're thinking, we drove so much hatred for our tax cuts. We're so smart. Okay, you're a despicable person, but at least you're honest about it. Everybody else, you're the suckers.
Yeah, when it comes to this whole thing with North Dakota, when you said you didn't think the bill would pass because it's not written correctly, I was thinking it may not pass because no one's up in North Dakota. It's like, I don't know, who do you think you are? You feel like you got to get up in this anti-trans fight as a red state? It's like, you're a state of no one really knows. But I could tell you that you should be looking for creating ways in which getting as many people to your state as possible and keeping people out by forcing them to use pronouns that you prefer. It just seems like extremely ignorant. But it really shows you that so many people out there, regardless of where they are on the map, are looking to hate on trans people or anybody who doesn't fit their narrative of how they should be living or what their lives should look like. Nobody wants to return to that. No one wants to live in a world where there's only one format of person. That's the beauty of living in a society where you have difference, where you are able to embrace diversity, where you can learn from different people and also where people get to be who they are. So I don't know, I just really encourage so many of these red states and individuals in them who are so anti-trans or anti-LGBTQ and so on and so forth to really just find some purpose in your life and focus on that and leave other people alone.
All right, everybody check out Adrienne on Rebel Headquarters. We got to take a break here, but when we come back, Donald Trump gives a hilarious speech at a funeral. All right, buckle up, brace for impact. That when we return. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk, and I'll see you soon.